Okay, we're going to talk about clients or potential clients that call in that are upset, and what makes an upset client, or somebody call us and say they're so angry at web companies or SEO. I had a guy tell me that SEO is not a good thing, and I told him, I said, well, SEO is not necessarily a bad thing. People misuse the word, like the word ignorant isn't a bad word, but people use it in a negative context, so it makes it bad. We are a web team that works for the client. People have gotten messed around by web companies for various reasons, and so when we talk to a lot of people, they're really angry. So people calling in, upset and angry. Now, we can't help it that when you do business, you get burned by people. If it was that easy, we'd all make millions and it'd be no big deal, and you could sign contracts and everybody do what they say they're going to do. Your employees would, your suppliers would, and people that provide business to business services like a web company would do their job as well. We do our job here, but we do have to fight against the experiences that other people have with other web companies. And I will say, I mean, 95% of them are bad. And it doesn't really matter if it's a kid or a guy or a girl working out of their house, or a team of 2 or 3. They're just too small. They don't have any resources. They'd love to make money, and they tell you the same exact thing that everybody else does. There is only one thing in common with all the large companies: they can sell well, and that's a problem. You know, I was talking to a roofer the other day, and I said, you know, people can get onto you if their roof looks bad or if it leaks. You can eyeball it and tell, but since you can't do that with web work, people they just start yelling at their web company and say, hey, by God, you ought to do it right. You better do it right, or I'm going to get mad, or I am mad. And they'll say, yes, sir, we'll do it. Just keep paying, things will get better. Well, if you can look at your website, I'd say about 60% of what we do, if not a little more, after the initial launch is done, you can actually see what we do. Some stuff you can't. We go into your Google Webmaster, change some coding or do something else. You can't see that. You can't tell. You can tell a design's pretty, but you can't tell if it's coded properly. So there's a lot of stuff that we do that you can't see, but you can tell if they're blogging, if they're adding to your social media wall post. Do they add pages? Do they ever change content? One red flag is they call you up and they say, hey, we like the website the way it is. Well, 19 out of 20 websites are pretty poorly done, or they're a template. So I would love not to have to redo a website. It costs us thousands up front in the hole, because we're just a month-to-month service and we don't charge anything down in most cases. And so we lose money when we launch a client. If I could use their old poorly done website or their halfway pretty template that is still poorly done, then we would, but people don't do that because they're unskilled. They don't want to spend the time to do it properly, so it gets recognized by the search engines through merit of a properly done website that's then worked on weekly. And so people will go out, they'll hire the kid, they'll hire the multinational firm. Hundreds of people is bad too. There's not enough managers there. There's not enough people that care. They can possibly all be skilled. So I go through, the other owner goes through, and there's a team of people here that gets trained continually. I couldn't really imagine properly running over 100 people. I just can't see that occurring. So we do boutique services at a low cost, and then you get results because we do the work properly. What normally happens is that the business owner doesn't know anything about it. They bite on somebody's sales pitch, and then the company does not actually do the work. So typically they just flat out don't do anything to speak of. Sometimes, like I had a guy yesterday that called and he was so very angry. And people like me for this reason, by the way, because I was a service business owner, and I do understand. I happen to be analytical and can run the web company, and I've been studying and learning this for about a decade now. So we're very well versed on it, but I'm also a peer to the clients, and when we talk, we understand each other. And it is frustrating when you're a service business owner and people can tell if you cut their hair well, or if you did their roof right, or if their air conditioner's cold, or if the sprinkler system or the plumbing's leaking. But the clients, when they go buy web services, can't tell, and therefore the companies tend to have very little integrity and don't do a good job for the client. Google and Yahoo and Bing notice this lack of effort, and then they don't like it, and then therefore your keywords and your mapping don't do well. So if you have it done properly and then worked on regularly by skilled people, then they look at it and say, hey, that's nice stuff. We like that, Bob. We're going to move you up in the search rankings. Remember, you do have some responsibility. I understand getting messed around. I did too, by the way. That's how I started the business a decade ago. It's a long story, but we hired a web company, didn't like it, and I hired some people. I had about 30 or 40 people back then. We hired about 4 web people, and we got into doing this for other people. This problem hasn't fixed itself. It's still as prevalent today as it was a decade ago. It's very difficult to find a decent web crew that'll actually work. Now, if you find it, it is fantastic and the results are great, and you get the equivalent of pennies on the dollar for your clicks, meaning you might get 5 times less than what you otherwise would have paid for the click, and certainly cheaper than print advertising or yellow pages or some sort of print distribution. So web work works great. I am sorry that you've been messed around, but I will also tell you that that's a rite of passage. If you haven't been messed around and everybody calls and you just take any service, then you just bite on something and you'd go on down the road. So people find us typically after getting burned, and they say, hey, Nolan sounds like he knows what he's talking about, and I do. He sounds like he might have some integrity, and I do. And so the company here will work hard for you. I'm glad you found us, and we'd love to be of service. I thought I'd explain that because it's so very common. It's not only common, it's everybody that calls in just about. It's rare that somebody calls in that hasn't been, and typically they'll go through the ringer before they get ready to get the proper service. We are month to month, by the way, and typically zero down to, and I always tell people, try us out for 90 days and we'll make you a believer, and you're not out thousands for the site, and people aren't lying to you here. We'll tell you exactly what we think is going to happen, exactly how many clicks we think you're going to get, and we're typically skilled in your area of service and have done some and have some examples. So give us a call. We'll be happy to talk to you, and tune in again or watch another video. Thanks.